Hello friends, welcome to Creative Medicine. In this lecture, we will learn about headache and migraine. So headache. First, the most common cause of headache is tension headache is the most common cause of headache. If you were asked what is the most common cause of secondary headache, most common cause of secondary headache is due to infections. Then if you were asked about what is the most common cause of headache in females, it is tension headache is most common followed by migraine. Then if you were asked what is the most common cause of headache in males also tension headache is most common than migraine, then cluster headache. Then most common cause of frontal headaches. Most common cause of frontal headaches are tension headaches. Okay. Then most common cause of occipital headaches. These are also tension headaches. Most common cause of frontal headaches and occipital headaches are tension headaches. Okay. First we will see. Most common cause of headache is tension headache. Most common cause of secondary headache is infection. Most common cause of headache in females, it is tension headache more than migraine. Most common cause of headache in males is tension headache more than migraine, more than cluster headaches. Then most common cause of frontal headaches is tension headache. Most common cause of occipital headaches is tension headache. Most common cause of temporal headaches is giant cell arteritis. The giant cell arteritis or giant cell vasculitis is most common cause of temporal headaches. Now, first, what are the most common cause of frontal headaches? The most common cause of frontal headaches are, in frontal headaches, you see, number one, tension headache is a type of frontal headache. Then you see hypertension, refractory errors, okay, hypertension, refractory errors, increased intracranial pressure. Around the intracranial pressure of 10 to 20 millimeters of Hg is normal. If the intracranial pressure is more than 25 millimeters of Hg for more than 5 minutes, then you can say that there is increase in intracranial pressure. Okay, so what are the frontal headaches? Frontal headaches are tension headache, hypertension, refraction, and increased intracranial pressure. Hypertension, tension headache, hypertension, refraction, and increased intracranial tension, intracranial pressure are frontal headache. Then the next important headache is occipital headache. So what do you see in occipital headache? In occipital headache, you will see tension headache, number one. Occipital headache is tension headache. Then you have hypertension, and then you have basilar migraine. So occipital headache is tension headache, hypertension, basilar migraine is occipital headache. So what are frontal headaches? Frontal headaches are tension headache, hypertension, refractory errors, increased intracranial pressure. Tension headaches, hypertension, increased refractory errors, and increased intracranial pressure. Tension headache, hypertension, refractory errors, and increased intracranial pressure are frontal headaches. Then we have occipital headaches, which are tension headaches, hypertension, and basilar migraine are occipital headaches. Then what is the most common cause of temporal headache? Temporal headache is giant cell arteritis. Next, what is migraine? Migraine is seen in a female. Most commonly it is seen in female, and you will see aura or blurring of vision is seen. And also the patient complains with pulsatile headache, which is unilateral pulsatile headache with throbbing headache, and also photophobia or phonophobia will be seen in the patient. And you will also see presence of nausea, vomiting is seen, and also there is increased intensity of headache is seen whenever the patient moves, especially with neck movements. So when do you call it a migraine? When there is pulsatile headache, which is one day illness, unilateral with nausea and vomiting, which is disabling in character, with increased intensity of headache and physical neck movements. So out of all these, if there are 4 out of 5 are positive and there are 5 attacks per year, then you can call it as migraine. Then what about the pathogenesis? In the pathogenesis, first we have calcitonin gene related peptide. Okay, there is a theories are present, which is calcitonin gene related peptide theory. Then you have glutamate or aspartate V nociceptors. Okay, then you have vasoconstriction of intracranial blood vessels will occur, which will lead to reflex. There will be vasoconstriction of intracranial blood vessels will undergo vasoconstricted, whereas extracranial blood vessels, there will be reflex vasodilatation of extracranial blood vessels. Okay, so these are the 3 theories. What are the? Calcitonin gene related peptide. Second, we have glutamate or aspartate nociceptor theories. Then we have vasoconstriction of intracranial blood vessels leading to reflex vasodilatation of extracranial blood vessels. So blood vessels, when they dilate, blood vessels, if you see, this is the dura mater. The blood vessels, when they dilate in the in the extracranially, outside the extracranially, when the blood vessels via the dura mater, when dilate, they cause pain. Why? Because of the stretching of this dura mater, they will lead to pain, and this pain is transmitted by the trigeminal nerves, so this will result in headache. Okay, the duration of attack will be 4 hours to 72 hours will be the duration of headache, and if you see the average duration of headache will be 24 hours. Okay, the main duration of headache is 7 hours to 72, 4 hours to 72 hours. Major duration of headache is 4 hours to 72 hours, and average duration of headache is 24 hours. Then, if pain persists for more than 72 hours, then we call it as status migranicus. Okay, then we have, if the patient has mild attack, so if the patient has mild to moderate attack, then you can give indomethacin can be given in the patient. In mild to moderate attack, indomethacin, which is COX-1 inhibitor, can be given, and also etorocoxib can also be given in the patient, which is actually COX-2 inhibitor. Then if it is, and also we can give PCM can be given, actually PCM is a COX-3 inhibitor, so these can be given if that is for mild to moderate attack. If it is actually severe attack, then you should give a sumatriptan can be given. This sumatriptan can be given either as mouth dissolving tablets or nasal spray or intramuscular injection, transdermal patch. Okay, these will maintain the normal tone of 5-HT1B1D partial agonists. Then one more important thing is the triptans are contraindicated in some conditions. They are contraindicated in pregnancy because they cause vasoconstriction. What does this triptan cause? They cause extracranial vasoconstriction. So as a result, because they cause vasoconstriction, they will inhibit the dilatation. See, the main thing is there will be vasoconstriction of intracranial blood vessels leading to reflex vasodilatation of extracranial blood vessels. This reflex vasodilatation of extracranial blood vessels, this is inhibited by the triptans. Okay, and as a result, they cause vasoconstriction. So if you give them in a pregnant woman, they can constrict the blood vessels which are leading to the which are going to the baby, placental blood vessels, and thus they are not given. And in Prinzmetal angina, obviously, in Prinzmetal angina, there is vasospasm. It occurs mainly due to the vasospasm of the heart, blood vessels in the heart. So Prinzmetal angina can also lead to, if you give sumatriptan in Prinzmetal angina, so the contraction or spasms further increases, leading to chest pain or angina. Then you can also give it in, it is contraindicated in basilar migraine also. It is contraindicated in basilar migraine, and it is also contraindicated in peripheral arterial diseases. It is contraindicated. So triptans are contraindicated in pregnancy, Prinzmetal angina, peripheral arterial diseases, and also basilar migraine. Now, if you were asked what is the fastest acting triptan, so fastest acting triptans are actually rizatriptan. Among all triptans, fastest acting triptan is rizatriptan, and longest acting triptan is flavotriptan. Longest acting is flavotriptan, and fastest acting is rizatriptan. So status migranicus. So if there is status migranicus, then we give IM prochlorperazine is given for status migranicus. IM prochlorperazine is given for status migranicus. Then there is a case, 25-year-old who has come to with excruciating episodes of vomiting. Headache is there along with 2 vomiting episodes. There is excruciating headache episodes with 2 vomiting episodes. On examination, the patient has nuchal rigidity. So in nuchal rigidity, what is the diagnosis? Subarachnoid hemorrhage is the diagnosis in this case. Then we have meningitis. So in the meningitis, what do you see? Meningitis is also a secondary headache where you see fever, altered sensorium, nuchal rigidity, photophobia, seizures, and headache is seen. Then there can be intracranial space occupying lesions, and there can be tension headache. Tension headache is also a type of headache. Okay, the other differential diagnosis. These are differential diagnosis of headaches are, we have meningitis, intracranial space occupying lesions, and tension headache also. So right. So first we will see some important points about tension. No, one. Okay. Now let us learn about some migraine variants. Okay, there are some migraine variants. Like one, we have ophthalmoplegic migraine. What is ophthalmoplegic migraine? Okay, first in ophthalmoplegic migraine, there the symptoms of pulsatile headache, one-day illness, unilateral, nausea presence, disabling in character. So this is called as pound symptoms. These are called as pound symptoms. Okay, these pound symptoms. So what are they? Pulsatile headache, one-day headache, one-day illness, unilateral, nausea, and if it is disabling character. Pulsatile headache, one-day illness, unilateral, nausea, disabling character. So all these are pound symptoms. In this ophthalmoplegic migraine, first the patient will have pound symptoms and then there will be resolution of symptoms. Okay. After the resolution of symptoms, the patient will suffer from ipsilateral third nerve palsy. He will suffer from ipsilateral third nerve palsy. So this is ophthalmoplegic migraine. Okay, the investigation of this is you can do non-contrast CT scan of head is done to rule out the stroke and cerebrovascular accidents. The non-contrast CT scan of head is done to rule out stroke and cerebrovascular accidents. Now, if you see the symptoms, because of third nerve palsy, the patient will develop ptosis. Because of third nerve palsy, the patient will develop ptosis and strabismus, which is especially divergent strabismus is developed by the patient. Okay, all these symptoms will spontaneously improve. So the patient develops ptosis and divergent strabismus will occur. Then we have one more variant which is called as familial hemiplegic migraine. We have familial hemiplegic migraine. So what do you see in familial hemiplegic migraine? This familial hemiplegic migraine is a calcium channel defect. And here you will see presence of pound symptoms, that is pulsatile headache, a one-day illness, unilateral illness, nausea and disabling in character. Along with that, there will be contralateral arm or face weakness should be there. So in familial hemiplegic migraine, here there is a calcium channel defect and as a result you will see pound symptoms. Along with that you will see contralateral arm or face weakness. And in this we have to do non-contrast CT scan of head should be done mainly to rule out the stroke. Non-contrast CT scan of head is done to rule out stroke and yeah. So this is about familial hemiplegic migraine. Then we also have one more type of headache which is called as giant cell vasculitis. So what do you see in giant cell vasculitis? In this, the patient will have, number one, he will have fever of unknown origin will be there. And along with that, there will be vasculitis of the superior temporal artery will be there. There will be vasculitis of superficial temporal artery. Here, there will be vasculitis of superficial temporal artery. Vasculitis will be there. Superficial temporal artery vasculitis is there. Okay, and because of this superficial temporal artery vasculitis, the patient presents with ischemia of the skin of the scalp with temporomandibular joint ischemia and jaw claudication. Okay, there will be ischemia of the skin of the scalp with temporomandibular joint ischemia and jaw claudication is seen. And also this patient also presents with ophthalmic artery vasculitis. The patient also presents with ophthalmic artery vasculitis and thus there can be blindness can also be seen. Okay. Then if you see the ESR of this patient is 100 millimeters fall in 1 hour, first hour. The EMR will fall by 100 millimeters in the first hour. And this temporal artery, superficial temporal artery will become thickened and it will be cord-like structure. So how are you going to investigate it? Investigation is this vessel wall biopsy should be done. That is superior temporal wall biopsy is done. And treatment is you can give steroids to the patient. So this is about giant cell vasculitis. Then let us now learn some important points about stroke. So stroke, for example, in the right-handed person, the dominant is parietal lobe, that is left parietal lobe is dominant. In the right-handed person, left parietal lobe is dominant, and also there will be left middle cerebral artery is the one which is dominant. Okay, in right-handed person, left parietal lobe is dominant and left middle cerebral artery is important. So, what happens if there are parietal lobe lesion? If there is a parietal lobe lesion, number one, in the dominant hemisphere we will see. In the dominant hemisphere, parietal lobe lesion in the dominant hemisphere, this will lead to, there is a problem in maths, defect in doing maths, or understanding written speech, written text will be problematic. There will be left to right orientation will not be the main. See, first we will see the uses or functions of the dominant lobe, the parietal lobe. The main functions of the parietal lobe are maths, doing maths or calculations, and then understanding the written speech, and then left to right orientation, and then speech. These are the main functions of dominant hemisphere. Dominant hemisphere functions are maths, understanding written text, left to right orientation, and speech. These are the main functions of dominant lobe. Then these middle parietal lobe is mainly supplied by middle cerebral artery. Okay, so if there is occlusion in the middle cerebral artery, the patient cannot do maths. That is, acalycula will be there in the patient. Then the patient has understanding written speech is problematic. So the patient will have agraphia will be there. Okay, left to right orientation is not possible. So the left to right disorientation will be there in the patient. Okay, even the speech will be defective, so there will be global aphasia. So in the middle cerebral artery, in the dominant hemisphere, you will see acalculia, agraphia, left to right disorientation, and global aphasia is seen. Now, if you see in non-dominant lobe, it is by middle cerebral artery again. Okay, but in right-handed patients, it is right middle cerebral artery. Right? So, in this non-dominant lobe, you will see number one, there will be visuospatial skills will be lost. There will be loss of visuospatial skills. So because of loss of visuospatial skills, so the patient will develop apraxia. Visuospatial skill loss is called as apraxia. Then the patient will also develop hemi-neglect. So in non-dominant parietal lobe, you will see two features. One, there will be visuospatial skills will be lost and the patient will develop hemi-neglect. This is about the parietal lobe. Then we have temporal lobe. In temporal lobe, in this hippocampus, in the temporal lobe, in the hippocampus, you will see short-term memory is seen. Temporal lobe, hippocampus, we have short-term memory, and in the neocortex, there will be long-term memory will be stored. So hippocampus is storage site for short-term memory and neocortex is storage site for long-term memory. Both these are present in temporal lobe. So here, whenever there is a lesion in temporal lobe lesion, then it will result in number one, anterograde amnesia. Anterograde amnesia is loss of a short-term memory. So that is anterograde amnesia. It will also result in prosopagnosia. In prosopagnosia, there is impaired memory of faces. That is, memory of faces is lost. So there will be prosopagnosia. Then there will be complex hallucinations will be seen. These complex hallucinations, like there will be defect in smell. So because the patient has hallucinations of smell, like he can feel rotten fish smell or dead rat smell will be there, and then there will be taste, complex hallucination related to taste, where the patient will have metallic taste. Then there will be complex hallucination regarding hearing. So in the hearing, the patient will have music. Okay. Then we have deja vu. In deja vu, it is undue familiarity of unfamiliar things is deja vu. That is, and this is also seen in temporal lobe lesion. Then we have jamais vu. Jamais vu is unfamiliarity of familiar lesion. This is also seen in temporal lobe lesion. So in temporal lobe lesion, there is hippocampus and neocortex. Hippocampus is for short-term memory and neocortex is for long-term memory. So if there is loss of short-term memory, it is called as anterograde amnesia. Impaired memory of faces is prosopagnosia, and then there is complex hallucinations are seen, which is smell, rotten fish, dead rat smell, and also the taste will be metallic taste. Hearing like music will be seen, and also deja vu, that is undue familiarity, and jamais vu, that is unfamiliarity, is seen in temporal lobe lesion. Then the next important is we have frontal lobe lesion. If there is frontal lobe lesion, in the frontal lobe, most important personality is through frontal lobe. Okay, in frontal lobe lesion, there will be aggressive antisocial behavior will be seen. Number one, aggressive antisocial behavior will be seen. There will be personality changes are seen due to this frontal lobe lesion, and the patient will also have urge incontinence. So because the patient will have urge incontinence, why urge incontinence? Because the mainly micturition center is paracentral lobule. As a result, the patient will have urge incontinence, and as a result, and then we have apathy will be there in the patient. Apathy is lack of interest in the self care. Apathy is lack of interest in the self care is apathy will be there. Then there will be abulia. Abulia is lack of desire to speech. Lack of desire to speak is abulia. Abulia will be there, and then you will also see primitive reflexes. What do you see in primitive reflexes? In primitive reflexes, we have two things. One, we have grasp reflex, and in grasp reflex, it persists up to 4 months, and we also have rooting reflex, which persists up to 1 month. Grasp reflex up to 4 months, and rooting reflex, which persists up to 1 month of age. These primitive reflexes will also be present in an adult in frontal lobe injury. So, if there is frontal lobe injury, the patient will develop aggressive antisocial behavior. Then personality changes will be there. Urge incontinence. So if there is urge incontinence, it occurs due to paracentral lobule. Then there will be apathy, loss of interest in care, abulia, loss of desire to speak. Loss of interest in care, apathy, abulia, loss of desire to speak, and also primitive reflexes are seen, which is grasp reflex, persists up to 4 months, and there is also rooting reflex, which persists up to 1 month. And one more important thing is in adults, especially the Morose reflex will also persist. In adults, Morose reflex will also persist for 6 months of age. Morose reflex will also persist for 6 months of age, and this Morose reflex will never reappears. It will persist for 6 months of age. Normally, Morose reflex will be persist for 6 months of age and then never reappears. And it will not appear in adults. All the primitive reflexes can reappear in frontal lobe lesion except the Morose reflex. All the primitive reflexes can reappear in frontal lobe lesion except the Morose reflex. Then we have magnetic gait, or also called as gait apraxia. Then we have something called as magnetic gait or gait apraxia. In magnetic gait or gait apraxia, number one, the patient has programming of gait. And then there will be festinant gait. Programming of gait and festinant gait will be there, which is mainly seen in Parkinsonism. In Parkinsonism, you will see festinant gait or programming of gait will be seen in these patients. This is also seen in frontal lobe lesions only. Next we have occipital lobe lesions. In occipital lobe lesions, here this occipital lobe lesion occurs due to the block in the P2 branch of postcerebral artery. Due to the block in the P2 branch of postcerebral artery, it will result in occipital lobe lesions. In the occipital lobe lesions, the patient will first and foremost develop homonymous hemianopia. So they develop homonymous hemianopia. The patients will develop homonymous hemianopia. Next, the patients will also develop visual hallucinations. Due to occipital lobe lesion, they will develop visual hallucinations, and also they will develop palinopsia. Palinopsia is persistence of an image even when the object is removed from the vision. Even when the object is removed from the field of the vision, if there is persistence of the image, then we call it as palinopsia. So, the patient will develop visual hallucinations, palinopsia, that is persistence of an image even when the object is removed from the field of vision, and he will develop homonymous hemianopia. Then if there is anterior cerebral artery lesion, anterior cerebral artery lesion will lead to spastic. First, it might lead to spastic monoplegia, or it can also lead to paraplegia also. Okay, and in anterior cerebral artery lesion, you will see that there will be gait apraxia can be there. in the patient, and also there will be personality change. Why? Because anterior cerebral artery is supplying the frontal lobe. Okay, so definitely there will be personality change will be there, and urge incontinence will be there, because the anterior cerebral artery is supplying the paracentral lobule, which is important for micturition center. Right, so this is anterior cerebral artery. Then we have middle cerebral artery fracture. If there is middle cerebral artery lesion, if there is middle cerebral artery lesion, then there will be contralateral spastic phase, and also you will see arm paralysis will also be seen in middle cerebral artery lesion. Then, if there is left middle cerebral artery lesion, so the patient will develop. If the patient is a right-handed person, and if there is left middle cerebral artery lesion, then the patient will develop aphasia. If the patient is right middle cerebral artery lesion results in apraxia. Right middle cerebral artery lesion leads to apraxia, whereas left middle cerebral artery lesion leads to aphasia, and also the finger agnosia, acalculia, agraphia, all those will be seen in left middle cerebral artery lesion. Then if there is posterior cerebral artery lesion, so occipital cortex is lost. So as a result, the patient will develop visual hallucinations, and he will also develop the homonymous hemianopia. Sparing of macular region is seen. There will be homonymous hemianopia with sparing of macular region is seen in these patients. Okay, next important is, if there is P2 lesion, there will be heavy blindness. Then if there is P1 posterior cerebral artery lesion, P1 posterior cerebral artery lesion causes midbrain stroke. Midbrain stroke is caused by P1 posterior cerebral artery lesion. Then if there is basilar artery lesion, it will cause pontine stroke. Basilar artery lesion will result in pontine stroke. P1 posterior cerebral artery lesion will result in midbrain stroke. Basilar artery lesion will result in pontine stroke. Then we have vertebral artery lesion. Vertebral artery lesion will lead to medulla. Stroke in the medulla. Okay. Then if there is anterior spinal artery block will result in medial medullary syndrome. Anterior spinal artery block will result in medial medullary syndrome. You have anterior spinal artery block. Then anterior cerebral artery block will result in frontal lobe involvement. Anterior cerebral artery, if it is blocked, then it causes frontal lobe involvement. If middle cerebral artery is blocked, then it mainly involves parietal or temporal lobe is involved. Okay. Then we have different syndromes. First, what is Weber syndrome? In the Weber syndrome, mainly you will see that there will be ipsilateral third nerve palsy. In Weber syndrome, there will be ipsilateral third nerve palsy and contralateral ataxic gait is seen. Ipsilateral third nerve palsy and contralateral ataxic gait is seen. Okay, and also the patient will have contralateral intentional tremors will be seen in the patient. Ipsilateral third nerve palsy. In Weber syndrome, you will see that the patient will have ipsilateral third nerve palsy with contralateral ataxic gait and contralateral intentional tremors are seen. So in Weber syndrome, there will be ipsilateral third nerve palsy with contralateral intentional tremors and contralateral ataxic gait will be seen. That is Weber syndrome. Then we have North Angle syndrome. So in North Angle syndrome, there will be ipsilateral third nerve palsy will be there. In North Angle syndrome, you will see ipsilateral third nerve palsy with contralateral ataxic gait. Contralateral ataxic gait will be there. Along with that, contralateral intentional tremors will be there. So North Angle syndrome is ipsilateral third nerve palsy with contralateral ataxic gait and contralateral intentional tremors. So this is North Angle syndrome. Whereas Weber syndrome, I'll explain Weber syndrome again. You should remove this part in the videos. Now, thank you and thank you for watching.